Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire Magazine, the premier inspirational magazine for women, now in her 11th year. I'm also the best-selling publisher behind the boutique publishing company InspiredLivingPublishing.com, which is dedicated to giving visionary female entrepreneurs, coaches, and health practitioners a voice and a high-profile media and publishing platform to share their wisdom, enhance their expert status, and bring their brand out of the shadows. Grab a copy of our recently released international bestseller, Midlife Transformation. You can do so at midlifetransformationbook.com. And for a limited time, when you order your copy, you'll receive access to over 60 transformational gifts. All of my brands, including the show, are dedicated to inspiring women to live their best lives. So welcome. Fear often gets in the way of expressing our voices in the world. Too often, we hedge, keep our voice private, or doubt its value altogether. You know that feeling, right? Because I know I do. I felt that way for many years, especially in my 20s and 30s. As my guest, transformational coach and spiritual mentor Nancy Swisher shares, as a woman committed to living your highest potential, finding the voice of your deepest self is essential. It is this voice that anchors you to and illuminates your path. Your ultimate authority is the divine voice in your own soul. Man, that really spoke to me when I read it. And today we're going to be talking about why women feel disconnected from their authentic voice, the difference between finding your voice and standing behind it. And Nancy will share what led her to write her memoir, The Life That Woke Me Up Was My Own, and her own journey of becoming disconnected from the fullness of her being and the choices she made to reconnect. A transformational coach and spiritual mentor, Nancy has been supporting women to heal, transform, and evolve in consciousness for over 20 years. Her signature program is called Find Your Voice, Stand Behind It, Change the World. Nancy's a certified facilitator of the acclaimed inner bonding spiritual healing process. She has traveled to London each year since 2011 to lead the Inner Bonding Weekend Workshop. While in England, she also teaches workshops on self-love, writing, and consciousness. Nancy holds an MFA in creative nonfiction from Vermont College of Fine Arts. She was awarded the New York Individual Artist Grant for Poetry in 1983 and has published prose and poetry in literary journals. Portions of her memoir received honorable mention at the Artists at Work Fellowship Competition. When she's not painting, writing, or working with clients, Nancy enjoys walking in nature, photographing birds, and having soulful conversations like the one we're about to have right now. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Linda. It's wonderful to be here with you.
I have to tell you, when I read your book, one of the chapters that really jumped out for me, because I believe so deeply in this whole topic about stories and the beliefs and stories that we carry with us that are unconsciously sabotaging our life. So the chapter was called We All Do Have a Story, and that the basis of it is that we all have stories that created early in life, and until we unravel them and understand that that's all they are stories and they're not true, life will always bring back to us, as your book shares, the false beliefs that our story contains. That just completely resonated with me in my own journey and my own path. So can we start there? Tell let's talk about what that means to you. What your teachings help people see about their stories.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great place to start. Just yesterday I was working with a client who's bringing her work out into the world a whole lot more. In other words, she's becoming more visible. And when that happens, when we keep becoming more visible as women, many times there is a backlash in our psyche, right? And it's unconscious. And so one of her stories was, I don't know enough to be doing this. And she's a very mature, successful woman, okay? But it's another layer of the story because she's bringing herself out in a bigger way. And so it's an evolutionary thing. I mean, to me, I think the story's there for a reason, yeah. It's programmed, it's conditioned, both from our personal history and the collective. And as we stay awake, you might think you've totally cleared something 20 years ago, but a little piece of it might come up again, and that's okay.
It's so true, and I have to say what you just talked about, I see so much with my private clients, especially all my clients are women, but it's this fear of visibility, this fear, this. It's so funny because I'm about to do a talk on this. It's about this fear of visibility that triggers old stuff, right? And these are the most confident, successful, amazing women, all in their own fields. So that trigger, right, that gets set off, that's connected to the old story. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So and it's like this old belief.
It's belief. It's in our nervous system too. It's belief. It's history. It's memory. It's the conglomeration of all of it. I'll share something that happened to me recently, if that's okay.
Of course.
I recently got my proposal approved at Kripalu Center to do my workshop there next year.
I saw that, and I was celebrating with you on Facebook.
Yeah, and so that was a huge deal for me, okay? It was a big win. It was like, I was really, really excited. And because it's not easy to get in there. And but the very next day, I was here doing my work, going through my life, and I was feeling a little bit of panic, a little bit of nervousness, kind of weak and shaky, like just things, right? And of course, I've done tons of work in my own life, so I knew pretty quickly, oh yeah, it's because I had a success yesterday. And so for me, as I share in the book, success and trauma, success is trauma bonded because I had a success in 6th grade, but it was connected with some trauma. So those two things are wired up. So even now, after decades of having healed, a little piece of that came back up when I had a new success that was even more visible than some of my others.
And I want to take a moment to thank you for sharing that because so often those who have been on the spiritual personal development path for many years, others looking from the outside in go, oh, you don't get it. You've been on this path for a long time. And I go, no, I'm human. The same shit comes up for me as it comes up for you. It's just now I have more tools to know when it's happening and to shift myself. That's the only difference, but we're still human. So thank you for being so open and vulnerable and sharing that, even as a guide, a teacher, a mentor, and someone that's been on this path for so long. Thank you for sharing that important. You have these moments because so many of us, I serve women in personal and spiritual development, right? Those are my private clients.
Yeah.
And this is something that comes in layers, I tell them.
Yeah.
Right? And exactly what you just described. They have the moment of success, whatever it may be, product launch, whatever it is. And then they feel like they energetically, spiritually crash.
Right.
Usually within the 24 to 48 hours. And they describe it as, I want to pull the covers over my head. I can't believe I did this and stepped out. I want to shrink back in.
Right.
Are those things you hear too?
Well, yeah.
From your clients?
Yeah. And I think it's important to talk about that we have those moments too, because, it's just, that's life, okay? I don't see it as like wrong that I have those moments, because that gives me the opportunity to be with it, look at it, and not choose it.
Exactly. It gives you the opportunity to make a different choice. The awareness is what gives us the opportunity.
That's right. And choosing again and again and again is how we evolve.
It's how I've changed my life.
How we evolve. Yeah. So I'm not trying to get rid of those things. Of course, there are moments when I want to. Okay. But like you said, it's our relationship to it that shifts.
Yes. And a perfect example was last week I released the book that I talked about in the opening, Midlife Transformation. It featured 29 amazing women. So launch day comes, right? It was epic.
Yeah.
International special. We hit all the lists.
I saw that.
Okay. Well, the next day, now I've worked with 200, it's going to be 220 authors, all entrepreneurs, all spiritual entrepreneurs. So the next day, I know what to expect. I've launched many books and big projects. So I know what can sometimes happen energetically the next day. And I have the tools. So I tapped in the next day. I said, Linda, if you're feeling this, imagine what someone without the tools is feeling. So I taped a video just for those 29 authors. And I said, I want to share something with you today. If you're feeling sad, overwhelmed, vulnerable, because your baby just got birth, your truth just got birth, your story just got birth, please know that that's normal. So when I shot the video and posted it in the private group, Nancy, 7 women immediately said, oh my God, I thought something was wrong with me. And I said, no. I said, it's another layer of emotional and spiritual healing. You just stepped through one of your greatest fears, which is to be vulnerable, to open up your heart and share authentically. I said, it's beautiful that you're feeling this way. And it was important that I let you know that it's okay, that it's a normal part of the process. And so I love your book because it's about, in your work, because it's about reminding women that it's okay to feel vulnerable. Yeah. It's okay to have these moments of fear and to hide. So thank you for the work you're doing in the world. Your story brought back that memory of what I just did for my authors last week, because I needed them to know it was okay. And by me sharing my truth of what I was feeling that day, let them know that it was a normal spiritual and emotional emotion.
Yeah. Inevitable in a way. I mean, not inevitable, but common.
Yeah, and I think inevitable is also a word, because when the type of books I do uses a model called authentic storytelling, so they have to go deep, and when they go into our process, they're actually releasing the next layers of trauma that was related to the story they're writing about. And it could be trauma, it could just be memories, whatever it may be. So the writing is cathartic, but then when your truth is birthed to the world on a public platform, that sets off the remaining triggers that may be still in there. And there's some triggers. But every single one of the authors, many come back over and over in my books, the one thing they say is, once the story was out, I felt as if the triggers in the energy was released from my body, because it was finally out, completely out. And what a beautiful experience for them. And I want to talk about I want to talk about this release and finding our authentic voice when we come back from our break. And we will be back in a moment. I'm speaking today with Nancy Swisher of nancyswisher.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Nancy Swisher. So, Nancy, right before the break, we're just talking about the power of story and being vulnerable and how sometimes that can trigger our fears every time we go to that next level of visibility. And it doesn't just mean in business. It just means in life, right?
Right, yeah.
Why do you believe that women in particular often become disconnected from that authentic voice?
Well, historically, there's lots of reason. If you study the history of women, there's a great journal I have that collection called Women's Voices. It's all Jungian therapists, and there are historical essays about how our voices have literally been silenced, okay? So there's the historical perspective, and that impacts us even if we're living now in 2017 because we're in the collective. We're part of a collective consciousness. So, and then there's our personal history. And one of the things for me was I was very connected spiritually as a little girl. And when I shared that with my dad and sister, there's one of the chapters about that. It's called Crazy. And when I shared my knowing about where we go after we die, my sister called me crazy. And my dad didn't actually call me crazy, but kind of laughed. And, there was this whole scene. Well, it was very impactful for me. And that's when I took on a belief, and it wasn't conscious, it was subconscious, but a belief that I was crazy or that my wisdom was crazy or my knowing was crazy. So I think our voices get stifled in many ways. That's one of the ways mine did. So people have to look and see. But especially when our voices are deep and soul-filled, wisdom-filled, I think there's more of a chance that it's stifled. It's okay to be, in our culture, other things are a lot more acceptable.
And it's so true. And In your book and even in your program, I love the name, by the way, Find Your Voice, Stand Behind It, Change the World. What's the difference between finding your voice, right, and then standing behind it?
But I'll share.
Yeah.
Well, you can, like I said somewhere in there on the web page, we can be very articulate and wise in a private little circle, okay? But if we stand behind our voice, we're putting it out. We're looking to see, why am I here and why do I have this voice and what am I supposed to do with it? How do I serve with this? What's the purpose of my wisdom? What's the purpose of my voice? And that's when we become visible, is when we stand behind it. If we don't stand behind it, we don't have to become visible, and therefore bring up all that stuff that comes with visibility. We don't have to risk being judged if we don't stand behind it. We're going to be judged.
Of course we are, and the more visible you are, the more judgment you receive. But
that's right. So
I would rather live authentically
risk,
and be judged than hide the truth of who I am.
Right.
So that's what it is. Is the standing behind it is, once you find it, don't hide it, don't smother it. Share it and share your gifts with the world, like you were talking about the client earlier that sometimes doubts herself, and I think that's just all of us, especially in this field and with the energy of the world. But stand behind it. In other words, share your message. You were given this gift for a reason. You have to own it and claim it.
Right.
It's powerful. And I just from the name of your program, the Change the World part, it sounds like you and I believe the same thing. I just want to say it out loud. But I believe that we all have a gift. Our role on this, in this lifetime, now, is to uncover that gift, right? That means doing the emotional and spiritual work to heal the stuff that's hiding that sacred gift, right? It's like almost like we have a diamond inside us and it wants to shine brightly, but it's covered with muck. So I believe our role is to uncover the gem within us, which is our soul's purpose. And then once we find it, I believe it's our gift, it's our duty to share it with the world.
Right.
Because no one else can fulfill that role that we were given. And it took me many years. I'm going to be 55. It took me many years to say, it's not about you. Step out of the way.
Yeah.
You have to own this, because if you come from a place of service, that's when it makes a difference. Is that what you mean by change the world? Bring that gift out to the world?
Yeah, and it's funny you ask about the third part, because I've been in this little I go back and forth between having that third part be called Change the World or Love the World. Because I think ultimately what we're doing is loving the world, and that's ultimately what I'm committed to, is loving the world. And but anyway, it's just semantics in a way. But yeah, I think we are responsible to bring our gift out. I mean, when I wrote this book, I spent 10 years on my book. So, people who write a book in a weekend, that kind of gets under my skin a little bit. But
because this is a really personal book, and you dove deep, and you wanted it to be of service.
Well, yeah, and it's literary, which is a little different, than self-help. But I had the book. I was following my guidance. There were many times I wanted to stop. There were many times I said, just write a business book, you need to do that. And it's like, no, I have to be true to this. I have to keep going. And 2 years before the book came out, one of the voices in my head said, just burn it. It was definitely a transformational journey of putting the book out, but I know that it's supposed to be in the world, and I know that it's serving people as they read it.
Well, I want to talk about, too, because the title I love, The Life That Woke Me Up Was My Own.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means to you.
Well, it means that it wasn't somebody else's life that woke me up, okay? It wasn't a guru. It wasn't a teacher. Not that we can't be influenced, but I believe all of our lives unfold perfectly, and then it's our job to grow into the awareness that can see it that way. Like, I don't think there's anything that's happened to me that wasn't supposed to happen for my journey, and I support my clients to look at their life that way, even though it can be really difficult to look at it that way sometimes. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to wake up. So, that's what it means.
I just love it because I'm like you, is I can look back at my life, and I had trauma in my past, and we can talk about that when we come back from the next break. It wasn't until I woke up to that I had the power of choice whether to carry that story and to be the victim and carry the pain. And I think that was my awakening was 1991. So it's going back a ways. But it's when I realized I had the choice. And I heard that day of my awakening was, the truth is that the essence of who I was as a child was never really touched, right? And that I was choosing to hold on to the pain and the victimhood. And at first, of course, no one wants to hear that. We're like, I remember going like, what? But in that moment, you would think that just the fact that I was hearing my divine guidance would be enough to go, holy smoke. Want to know what woke me up that day, Nancy? It was a word you've used a couple times. I heard in that whole phrase, in that download, I heard the word choice. Because when you are in the victim mentality and the pain and the suffering, you believe falsely that you have no choice, that choice was taken away. And when that day I received the divine download, you'd think I would have tapped into all the other stuff that was said. I heard choice. And I grabbed the napkin. I've talked about this multiple times. I grabbed the napkin, and I remember feeling hope fill my heart. And I'm like, choice? I have a choice? I don't have to feel like this? It was like, oh. And I started writing.
Right.
I want to feel loved. I want to laugh again. I want joy. I want to be able to trust. And that napkin followed with Dunkin' Donuts napkin. That followed. I kept that tattered thing for years, and I stepped off the path of where I was heading, which was contemplating the end of my life, to the path I'm living now. All from that one word of choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was easy. I mean, I had to go through a lot of healing. But
of course.
What a powerful word, right?
Yeah, it is.
It changed my life. And let's talk about that when we come back from break, and I'll be back in a moment with my guest, Nancy Swisher of nancyswisher.com.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Experience a homecoming to your heart. In the foreword of Dr. Deborah Riebel's new book, Being Love, How Loving Yourself Creates Ripples of Transformation in Your Relationships and the World, Marcy Shimoff shares, the answer to our inner longing isn't finding love, it's being love. The practices that Dr. Deborah presents in Being Love are keys to opening your heart and receiving your divine birthright as a physical manifestation of love. Her techniques, developed over years of successful private practice with her clients and from her extensive training in multiple disciplines, are accessible, compassionate, and effective. Her message is powerful, and if you allow it, will change your whole life. Order your copy of Being Love today at beinglovebook.com and receive over 45 transformational gifts. Being Love is brought to you by Inspired Living Publishing.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Nancy Swisher of nancyswisher.com, the author of The Life That Woke Me Up Was My Own. So, Nancy, right before the break, we were talking about choice and how, as simple as that word sounds, it can really shift everything on this transformational path. So did choice play a key role in your healing from trauma? Because as you share in the book, and we can talk a little bit about, you had some early trauma, both what you remembered and what you forgot.
Right.
Was choice a part of your healing journey from that?
Absolutely. I was just looking for something here in the book. Yeah, it's funny. 1991 was my year too.
Spring. It was mine. Was spring 1991.
Yeah. So of course, I was always choosing consciousness. And even though my voice, even though I wasn't brave enough to speak much or share everything, I was always choosing consciousness, and by that I mean I was always seeking, who am I really? Before, there was never a time that wasn't what I was doing. And language was a key part of that for me, as I talk about in the book. But the choice that you're talking about is choosing what we believe, choosing what we believe and what we think and who we're going to be. And it takes a while to really get that is a choice.
Yes.
It
took me a while.
Ongoing practice. Yeah. I'm 65. I'm older than you.
You look good,
a whole
baby.
Decade. Huh?
You look good,
but,
baby.
I'm young at heart. So that kind of choice, right? And again, it's a practice. That's how I approach it.
It is a practice. Like a lot of people that have been following my story over the last, since 92. I had the awakening in 91, got on the path, in 92 opened my first business with a desire to serve. And within 5 years, I was on NBC's, a national talk show for NBC, about my life story and how I changed my life from runaway, welfare mom, and all that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been one hell of a journey, and through it all, I can say
we just met. We just met, kind of.
Yes, yeah. So you don't know the background, but one of the things.
Exciting.
Yeah, and one of the things, Nancy, is why I do what I do, is I want all women to know, and I say it often, is your past does not define your future. Your thoughts and actions today in this moment do. Right? And I want my story, my journey, my truth, if by being open and vulnerable and sharing where I've been and where I am now can inspire one woman to believe in the power of possibility, then it's all been worth it. Because now I can look back at my life and go, I giggle kind of. I'm like, oh, so that's why that had to happen, which others could see as a perceived negative, right? Because I've made wrong decisions in my life.
Yeah.
But now I can personally look back and say, thank you for that blessing. Because I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the compassion, the empathy, the love if I didn't go through that pain, that struggle, that suffering.
Right.
So I have no regrets of the pain. And to be able to say that at this point in my life, and I have found forgiveness and for the wounds caused by others, and that was another major part of healing my own life. Has forgiveness played a role in your healing or in the work that you do with your clients? Is that a topic that you delve into?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was big. It's a big part of, I think, just being alive. There's so much to forgive. But yeah, it's a process. When there's been childhood trauma, it's definitely a process to forgive, because you have to have compassion for the inner child, the child who went through whatever they went through. And, so forgiveness, it takes time sometimes, and that's okay. And I think our higher self, our essence, our soul, whatever word you want to give it, that part is always in a state of forgiveness.
Exactly. Yes.
Always. So, but it's, I talk about it with people. It hasn't, not so much lately, but when I first started working, I worked with trauma a lot with clients, but now I work a lot more with just, like find your voice, stand beyond it, change the world. And little pieces of trauma come up, but it's not the primary focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny because now that you said that, when I was dealing with because our backgrounds are the same in regard to the childhood trauma. So when I was healing from it in the early 90s, I noticed that until I found the forgiveness, and I had to do that my own way and found it, I was actually able to create a completely different relationship with the abuser. And it not only healed me, it rippled out to heal so many others. That I didn't know that. I didn't know that until many years later when they told me. But it played a major role. And then I also believe that a lot of women who at that time knew my story, I speak about it less now because it's not the essence of who I am, but they see what's possible, right? That joy and happiness is still on the other side of the pain they may be experiencing in this moment. And that's my message. That's what my brands are all about, is reminding women of the truth of who they are, to inspire them to live from the inside out, right, instead of the outside in, which is what the world is constantly telling them. You know?
That's why the voice has been lost.
Exactly. And what happens is, for a lot of my clients, I have noticed, they start to hear the whisper. I call it soul whispers, and I have a lot of hashtags that everyone knows me for, soul whispers and soul giggles. And I say, you'll hear this voice and you know it's your truth. But so many women are afraid to listen to it, so they stuff it down going, oh no, that will rock my world, that will rock my current life.
I know.
I'm afraid, and they wonder why it starts to manifest as physical illness in their body. And I've been there too.
Exactly.
And they keep stuffing, or they turn to food or alcohol or shopping or drugs. And I'm like, do you see that if you only listened? It's your soul trying to guide you back to your truth. And that's what I see your book is about. It's about reminding women of the truth of who they are. And you do it through your story.
And see, that's part of, the fear of listening, the fear of slowing down and listening, because you might have to change your life. You might have to say no to something. You might have to leave a marriage. You might have to quit a job. You might have to do something.
I've done both of those, darling, so I know that.
Right. You might have to, so, yeah.
But you know what? So, and I'm, my life, I've done both those things left a marriage over 23 or 24 years ago, left a job to open a business when people said, "Are you crazy? You finally got off welfare and got a real job with health insurance and benefits. You're supposed to stay there till you die."
Right.
I knew my soul was going to die
exactly.
if I did that. I'm meant to
Yeah.
be of service. But it doesn't mean it wasn't uncomfortable. But I had to own my truth.
Not
Even
at
as I was
all.
defining my truth, I had to own it. But I don't want to give anyone the false illusion that it was comfortable. It wasn't comfortable, but I would rather be uncomfortable and live my truth than to continue living the inner lie that I was living.
Right. Yeah.
And
I really believe it's important to honor your journey, honor it, every part of it,
because we have a tendency to label it, right? Like the bad part of my journey, the this part.
Yeah, exactly. Just like people will start a session and they'll say, "I'm great." And it's like what they mean is I'm not feeling any fear or any of the things I label as negative.
Yes.
And it's like, I really am at a place in my life where I really do welcome it all because I know that none of it is me. And once you realize that you're not your thoughts and feelings even, then you can welcome them all a little bit more and you have more choice with it. But if you're identified with it, you're in trouble. You're always going to be trying to change it. If you're identified with it, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
I think the day I knew I had learned, even though I didn't know I had come to that point, that I had learned that I wasn't my thoughts and feelings was many years ago in the past. If there was drama or family issues going on, like we all have in our families in life, I used to feel like I would look at the drama and it would be a tornado, right? Because I'm visual, and I would always feel pulled into the tornado, right? Because it was, I wanted to fix, I wanted to, help. And
right.
One day, a pretty significant event was happening in a family member's life. And in the past, the tornado would come, Linda would get sucked up, right? Because I wanted to be the helper, and it was codependency. And one day, Nancy, I could see the drama. I could see the tornado. And for the first time in my life, and this is about 8-9 years ago, I was standing outside the tornado, grounded in my own truth, grounded into the earth, holding love in my heart, and the tornado went right by me. And I knew then that I didn't have to enter the tornado. I didn't have to enter their story. I didn't have to give my power away, but I could still love and support without the cost of myself. That was a big moment for me, to not step into the stories and beliefs. And that's when I knew I had healed something that had always caused me to step into the tornado.
Right.
And we're going to take a real quick break, our last break, and we'll be back in a moment. And I want to spend the last few moments, if you could share some tips when we come back for the listeners who may feel that they've lost their voice and want to speak up more bravely. And I'll be back in a moment with Nancy Swisher of nancyswisher.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ladies, it's time to remove the veils of pain, shame, and self-doubt that are smothering your inner light and leave you feeling disconnected from the truth of who you are. You are a radiant, divine woman of strength, love, and wisdom who deserves to live a life of joy, love, and inner peace. Life and spiritual coach Mal Duane, who is often referred to as the champion for restoring women's self-worth, supports women in stepping out from behind the energetic veils that separate them from the truth of who they are. It is possible to move through your fears, break through limiting beliefs, and release the shackles of shame and self-judgment. And you don't have to do it alone. Take the first step in reclaiming your life by visiting malduanecoach.com for empowering resources and supportive services.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Hailing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Nancy Swisher. So, Nancy, we talked about finding our voice and what happens when we're disconnected from it. But do you have a few tips you can share with our listeners who, in this moment, really feel disconnected from their voice and don't know how to speak up? What are some of the tips you would share?
Well, the first thing is you have to really want to. And I'm serious about that. There has to be a strong desire to really be in your authentic self and to speak from there, to write from there, however you're going to express your voice. And so that's the first thing, because if there's no desire, and it has to be strong, because there's a lot of things many times to overcome and to sort through in order to tap into that deepest part of yourself. So the desire has to be there. It can't just be some tiny little thing you want. That's my first hurdle for any person who wants to work with me, is how strong is their desire. Abraham Hicks in one of their teachings once said, you can't push a wet noodle. And what that means is, if somebody's just working with you and you're really coaching them without a desire, nothing's going to happen there. It's like a wet noodle, okay? And then once that's there, one of the things I do a lot is, I believe with myself and with clients, is to go into a meditative state and really listen deeply inside yourself, and then open your eyes and just write. Let yourself write. Ask your intuition, what would you like to say to me right now? And you want to start to feel the words. You want to start to feel the resonance of your words. And it's very important to read your writing out loud, whatever kind of writing it is, because then you can feel the resonance and hear your voice, okay? And then, of course, the inner child, the voice dialogue with the inner child is important. I think it's an important aspect of our work ongoingly, because there is an inner child, and so speaking out loud back and forth to the child helps you find your voice too, because if you didn't have somebody speaking lovingly to you as a child, you got to develop that loving adult voice, and that's part of our authentic voice. So that's another way to access that voice. So desire, meditation and writing, and listening to your voice, speaking it out loud, and doing the inner child voice dialogue. Those are 3 ways to access your authentic voice.
Those are great tips. And for those who aren't familiar with the inner child dialogue, that would be like writing a letter to your inner child and talking to her?
Well, yeah, it's it can go very deep, but
for someone new on the path that is drawn to it and isn't sure what it means, what would your guidance be?
Well, I would send them to the Inner Bonding website.
I love Margaret. She's a guest. She's going to be an upcoming guest.
that's that's a great way to work with the child. I've been working with the inner child since 91 and teaching it since 95. So, it's an in-depth thing. There's also a great book called Rediscovering Your Inner Child by Lucia Cappuccione. She actually created the non-dominant hand work with the inner child. Lucia Cappuccione. That book's still in print. It came out in the 90s. And that's a great little workbook for rediscovering your inner child. It's a big piece of the work I do, not all of it, but it's an essential tool. It's real. The inner child is real. It's not.
I've
just
always
some
believed.
concept.
I've just from life experience.
It's real. So yeah.
And I love what you said about reading your words out loud. Is there something about hearing our own voice that shifts something differently from just reading it?
Yeah, when you really listen, you can hear the resonance of what is really true and what's not, or what is. You can hear the level of the consciousness behind it. Because there's lots of words in the world. There's more words than there's ever been in the history of humanity, okay? Not all those words are filled with consciousness. So the words I'm interested in are words that have behind them the consciousness of the person. And so that's really, I have a wonderful actual ebook called How to Keep a Spiritual Journal, and it leads people through this kind of thing. How to really ask questions, how to listen to your own voice, and that kind of thing. And maybe it's because I'm a poet too, the words and the sound of words, but that is how I stayed connected and remained connected to my own essence throughout my life, was language. So that's been a key piece of my journey. So that's why I know how powerful it is, and yeah, I think giving it an actual voice is really important. When I have people read their own writing out loud, they get it. They hear it. Or if I read it back to them out loud, then they get it. Because people will write these amazing goosebumpy pieces, right, in our sessions. And it's like, I'm going to read that back to you. And so anyway, yeah, it's very important. It's one of the ways to find your voice.
Well, it's so funny that you said it, because I've always believed that if you have affirmations you want to do, it's great to write them, and I do, and I make gorgeous graphics and all that. But I noticed if I really want to shift something within myself, right, whether it's, whether I want to heal or shift anything, I write them, I put a lot of intention into them, but then I record them in my own voice and listen to myself saying it to me. And I've used that for, over probably 10, 12 years. And I feel it's so powerful, because I think it brings an added layer into your subconscious of...
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and so to hear you say, and I never thought of doing, like, reading my journal entries or other writings out loud to myself, but I can see the power of doing so now that you shared that with us.
And think about, as if when we were little, we might have been afraid to actually say what we thought, to actually hear our voice, right? Or maybe our voice wasn't really heard. And so on many levels, it's very healing and powerful to read aloud. I have a really short piece here that's apropos to what we've talked about today, that's from my book, if we have time.
Yeah, if we have a couple more minutes, so please.
Okay, it's called Healing. The root of the word heal is the same as the root of the word whole. When most people think of healing, they think that there is something to be fixed within them. There is nothing to fix, only a true perspective of self-defined, only wholeness of self to feel. Believing untrue things about oneself causes all of the emotional pain we typically seek to remedy. Healing is the process of becoming conscious of these unconscious beliefs and the painful feelings they cause. Thought precedes feeling. Most of the time, people are not conscious of the thoughts that cause their feelings, but slip into the feeling unconsciously. I liken thoughts to slippery fish. Until we catch them, grab hold of one, examine it, and ultimately choose it or not, we are not living a conscious life.
That is so beautiful. I think it's a beautiful way to close out our show. It just, you could feel the love and the wisdom in that piece. So thank you for choosing that particular one to share in our conversation today.
Oh, you're welcome. We talked a lot about choice, so I thought that was a good one.
It was perfect, divinely selected. And I want to thank you for being here with me today, for Nancy, and for doing the work that you're doing in the world. So thank you, my friend, for joining me.
You are very welcome. It was fun to be with you.
And I want to thank everyone for joining me for Inspired Conversations. Listen in every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern for more sacred conversations with visionary women just like Nancy, who are here to share their feminine wisdom to support you in living your best life. For even more inspiration, claim your free subscription to Aspire magazine, which includes over 40 transformational gifts. You can do so at subscribe-to-aspire.com. Until next time, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.